Okay. Vajnanatiradasyajanagnasalakayam chakshusmilitam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Maha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Shapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamaya Dadati Sa Parantikam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Radha Shivasati Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I know what I'm saying here. Okay, we are going to speak from the 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Everybody can hear me?
Yes.
No.
Yes. We can hear you loud and clear.
Oh, now I can see, I can hear you too. What is your good name?
Oh, Prabhuji, my name is Shiv Kumar.
Shiv Kumar Ji.
Yeah, Shiv Kumar Ji.
And this is Sanjay?
Yes, that's correct.
Nice to see you, Sanjay. Okay. Bhagavad Gita, as we know, is in 18 chapters. So the 9th chapter is like the middle of it. That's why I've chosen that. It kind of gives it the essence. It's considered the most confidential knowledge, chapter 9. Now, in the beginning chapters, we learn, first of all, the first teaching that Arjuna receives from Krishna. Krishna says to him, you and I and all these kings have already existed in the past, and as individuals, we're existing now. In the future, we shall also exist. So this is the first good news, that we're eternal. We're not going to die. When the body is finished, we remain. So this is confidential knowledge. Many people don't understand this. They think when you're dead, you're dead. But Krishna is assuring us that we're going to remain. So this is some kind of confidential knowledge, but more confidential knowledge is who is God and what is my relationship with God and what is the material nature. There's 3 main categories. There's the Lord, the living entities, and material nature. And they're all eternal. But material nature is sometimes manifest and sometimes not manifested. It's like it goes in cycles. But the living entity has a choice. He's called marginal. He can identify with matter or he can identify with spirit. If he identifies with the spirit, then he doesn't die. He doesn't go into he gets out of the material world. Otherwise, if he's still in the material world at the time of when the manifestation is over, then he's like wrapped up in a seed form. He remains in the Mahatattva, in the material energy, for some time until again there's another day of Brahma. Then he comes out. Again, and it becomes into action. So it's like a seed in the winter. The seed of the tree is dormant. And then again, in the spring, it fructifies. So this is on the material side. On the spiritual side, it's always existing. Krishna explains this in the 8th chapter. He says there's another nature which is eternal. It's not manifest and unmanifested, but it's always existing. So we have a choice. If we become qualified, we can be situated on the spiritual side. But if we remain on the material side, then we have to go through the cycle of birth and death, being born sometimes as a prince, sometimes as a pauper. But there's no getting out of this cycle of birth and death except if we come to the point of qualification. Now, qualification is also different kinds. In other words, there are different kinds of liberation. One kind of liberation where the living entity merges into the spiritual energy and it becomes one with the everything. This is called impersonal liberation. But for the Vaishnavas, and Krishna is recommending that we don't lose our identity, but we remain as individuals within the spiritual world. So this may be a little hard for us to understand, but we give the example of the ocean. The river goes into the ocean, and it merges with the ocean, but in the ocean, The living entities are there, and in the river also. They don't merge. They remain individuals. Just like another example is a green bird goes into a green tree. So it merges with the tree, but it remains as an individual within the tree. So this is our Vaishnava understanding, that we don't lose our identity. As Krishna tells Arjuna, you and I have always existed in the past. We're existing now as individuals. You're not me, I'm not you. So in the future, we'll also remain individuals. So in Hinduism, due to whatever history is there, Sankaracharya and others, there's a school of thought that thinks, no, we lose our individuality, we become one with everything. But that's not very practical. We don't see how everybody can be a variety. In other words, variety is the spice of life. Variety is the mother of enjoyment. We want to we can maintain a variety, but a spiritual variety. So that Krishna is offering. He's offering us that opportunity to remain as individuals, but get a spiritual body. Now we have a material body. We can qualify to get a spiritual body. It's already there within us, but now it's covered by the gross body and mind, which is the subtle body. This is described in the 7th chapter, that the soul has two coverings. Earth, water, air, fire, and ether are the gross coverings of the soul, and mind, intelligence, and ego are the subtle coverings. But beyond these coverings is the soul proper, the soul itself. So the soul is who we are. So the Bhagavad Gita and Krishna are telling Arjuna and telling us how to get free from this covering of material energy and come to the spiritual side, where there's also existence and variety. So in the 9th chapter, let me just read the first verse, what Krishna says. He says, Shri Bhagavad Gita, so the Lord is speaking. Idam tu te guyatamam vakshyashyami anusuyave jnanam vijnanam sahitam yajnatva mokshaye subhat. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, said, my dear Arjuna, because you are never envious of me, I shall impart to you this most confidential knowledge and realization, knowing which you shall be relieved of the miseries of material existence. There's a lot of information here. The first one is that we're in the material world because we're envious. In the spiritual world, there's no envy. This is also described in the 7th chapter, that the living entity comes to the material world, because it has desire and it has aversion. So what is the desire? We want to be God. And what is we don't like that somebody else is God. So envy is there. That's what brings us to the material world. So now Krishna is appreciating Arjuna, because you're never envious of me, I'm going to give you this information. So this is one point. We have to try to give up being envious. And all together, or you say that envy ultimately comes to that we're envious of Krishna. Why is that? Because he's the most beautiful, he's the most renowned, he's the most wealthy, he's the most qualified in every way, and we want to have that position. So in the spiritual world, we don't have that mentality. We're happy to be the servant of Krishna, the servant of the servant of the servant of Krishna. But when we come to the material world, we do it because of false ego. We want to be in the center. We see in our children. The children are generally considered as pure. But if we analyze the child, we see that ego is there. They don't care if they disturb a lot of people, like we see on the plane sometimes. One child may be crying, 50 people may be disturbed, but we have to tolerate because the child is egocentric. So we're born with false ego, that I should be in the center. But now when we come to the spiritual side, we accept the spiritual master, and we accept that, yes, that's not my position to be in the center. My position is to be the servant of the center. And who is the center? Is Krishna. And the spiritual master, he will help us. He's the external manifestation of the Lord. I remember once our spiritual master was giving a class, and he was saying how the spiritual master is the representative of Krishna. Not that he's Krishna, but he's representing. He's presenting Krishna purely. So after the class, next day actually, I mentioned to him, I said, Srila Prabhupada, I very much like your class last night. And he asked, what part did you like? I said, the part where you said that you were representative of Krishna. So he liked that. He accepted that. And then he said, you can also be representative of Krishna. When you say Shri Bhagavan Uvacha, when you actually represent him, instead of putting your own theory, your own speculation, because everyone thinks, who am I? What is the meaning of life? So we come up with some different theories, and we may be very intelligent. We think, oh, everything comes from the Big Bang, and there's this and that. So we say, no, that kind of speculation will never bring us to the realization. We have to get the information from the superior. The information is already there. We give an example. You want to know who is your father. You want to know who your father is. The real authority is your mother. She can tell you, yes, this man is your father. I took a seed from him into my womb, and you came out after 9 months. So I can say with authority, this is your father. So the mother is like the Veda. She's giving us information that here is the source of everything, and we should inquire. Atata Brahma Jigyasya. And then if we receive the knowledge in that way, coming down into succession, we could give up the speculation, of which we're very proud. So this speculation is what's keeping us in the material world. We won't be able to figure out what is what just by our speculation. Even if we take it from a material point of view, here we're on the Earth planet, we're in one little house in Orlando. Look at the Earth planet is only a small particle of the solar system, and the solar system is only a small particle of the universe, and that there's many universes are there. So how can we expect to know everything from our little position, our presumptuous brain? We won't be able to figure out everything. But if we hear from the right source, then everything can be revealed to us. So this is the process. Shravanam begins by hearing. Shravanam and Kirtanam. Then when we hear nicely, we can repeat. We repeat in the mood of a servant, so we don't become proud. We saw that Srila Prabhupada had so many disciples. Wherever he went, he was glorified. But on his own person, he was very humble. Why was that? Because always remembering his spiritual master and always remembering Krishna, and in that relationship, he was a humble servant. It wasn't artificial humbleness. He was humble because he knew what his position was. He's a servant of the servant of the servant. And so there's no question of being proud of his knowledge. There's an ordinary professor, anybody from this side, from the material side, they become proud and they speculate. Oh, I think, perhaps, maybe. But the devotee, he's fixed. So guru means fixed. He can't be tilted because he's getting the knowledge from the right source. And so this is what Arjuna, Krishna is telling Arjuna, that I'm going to give you the most important knowledge, confidential knowledge and realization, knowing which you shall be relieved of the miseries of material existence. This is the next important point in this verse. Dukalayam ashashvatam. Material nature is full of trouble. It's temporary. Everyone has to experience trouble from other living entities, from their own mind and body, and from the nature. Sometimes too hot, too cold, mosquitoes. Something is troubling us. But we're saying our real nature is Ananda, is blissful. So why are we in this troublesome nature? And that should give us impetus to try for liberation, to try to come to the point of real happiness, which is available in the human form of life. There's some urgency. Now we have this human form of life. The next life we may, due to our karma, we may be born as a dog. Then we no question of inquiring, who am I? What is the meaning of life? Why am I suffering? Now we have this human form of life. We should take this opportunity. There's some urgency You have opportunity to make a solution to the problems, to the miseries. Now you may say, well, I'm not miserable. I'm in America. I have a good job, good bank balance. Everything is nice. But it's temporary. After a few days, then you'll get another position. And even in this position, there's always some trouble. Who can remain comfortable in this world? There's always some trouble. We become comfortable, and then some trouble comes. We have to shift our position. So we're saying this is not our real home. Our real home is eternal, full of knowledge and bliss. But this position is temporary, full of ignorance and suffering. So we should try for our real home. And how do we do it? We just have to hear from Krishna, accept it, and practice it. Purport. This is an explanation by our spiritual master. As a devotee hears more and more about the Supreme Lord, he becomes enlightened. This hearing process is recommended in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Quote, the messages of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are full of potencies, and these potencies can be realized if topics regarding the Supreme Godhead are discussed amongst devotees. This cannot be achieved by the association of mental speculators or academic scholars, for it is realized knowledge. The devotees are constantly engaged in the Supreme Lord's service. The Lord understands the mentality and sincerity of a particular living entity who is engaged in his service, and he gives him the intelligence to understand the science of Krishna and the association of devotees. Discussion of Krishna is very potent, and if a fortunate person has such association and tries to assimilate the knowledge, then he will surely make advancement towards spiritual realization. Lord Krishna, in order to encourage Arjuna to higher and higher elevation in his potent service, describes in this 9th chapter that is more confidential than any he has already disclosed. The very beginning of Bhagavad Gita, the 1st chapter, is more or less an introduction to the rest of the book. In the 2nd and 3rd chapter, spiritual knowledge described is called confidential. Topics discussed in the 7th and 8th chapter are specifically related to devotional service, and because they bring enlightenment in Krishna consciousness, they are called more confidential. But the matters which are described in the 9th chapter deal with unlike your devotion. Therefore, this is called the most confidential. It was situated in the most confidential knowledge of Krishna is naturally transcendental. He therefore has no material pangs, although he is in the material world. In the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, it is stated that although one who has a sincere desire to render loving service to the Supreme Lord is situated in the confidential conditional state of material existence, he is to be considered liberated. Similarly, we will find in the Bhagavad Gita 10th chapter that anyone who is engaged in that way is a liberated person. So we can become liberated simply by hearing, but we have to hear from the right source. Not very difficult, but we see practically people can't do it. How many people are listening now? 10. So that's a lot, quite frankly. We were mentioning yesterday to Sanjay and Mr. Gautam that even one person who takes the process sincerely, then we consider that a success. Because people are bored. They don't want to listen. They want to talk. Or they want to do something, surf the internet, and try to enjoy this material world. But ultimately we become frustrated. The material world is arranged in such a way to frustrate us. If we're intelligent, we'll become frustrated. Because our desires are always thwarted. Nobody can say, all my desires are fulfilled. No, it's arranged in such a way to frustrate us, because this is not our real home. So that frustration will bring us to the point of willingness to hear from the right source. So Krishna is the right source, and he's giving this knowledge in parampara. We're receiving it that way from our spiritual master. We're reading his purport. I want to go to the 2nd verse, because this is a very enlightening verse. Rajavidya Rajaguyam Pavitramidam Uttamam Pratyaksvaragamam Dharmyam Kartamavyayam. So 2nd verse, Krishna says, this knowledge is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets. It is the perfect knowledge because it gives direct perception of the self by realization. It is the perfection of religion. It is everlasting, and it is joyfully performed. It gives direct perception of the self by realization. is everlasting and is joyfully performed. So it's not a difficult thing. It is joyfully performed. Serving Krishna is natural, joyful activity of the soul. But we don't believe in Krishna. We think that I should be the center. And therefore we say we have to give up this envy. We're not in the center. We don't belong in the center. We're the particle. We're the tiny particle of Krishna. Mama Vamsa Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. We're eternal. Krishna is eternal. We're also eternal. But he is the Paramatma. He is the Supreme. And we're the dependent eternal. So there's two eternals. One is dependent and one is independent. So Krishna is independent eternal, and we're the dependent eternal. And if we're a little bit honest with ourselves, we admit that we're dependent. That's one of the differences between us and God. God is independent, but we're dependent. Just like we're sitting here discussing philosophy, but we're dependent on what? We're dependent on the air. Suppose there's no supply of air. Then how long will we sit comfortably and discuss? Just a few seconds, we'll be choking. So we just take it for granted. Oh, the nature is supplying the air. But whose nature? We're not making that in our factory. The nature is superior to us. It's a superior nature. And we're dependent on that nature. And we should admit that our dependence. And ultimately, Krishna says, he is the source of everything material and spiritual. And this nature is coming from him. So we surrender to Krishna, then we can get out of the material nature and qualify to enter into the spiritual world, which is our real home. Therefore, the name of our magazine is called Back Home, Back to Godhead. Our real home is to be situated on the transcendental side. But because of misuse of independence, we come to the material world where we can imagine we're independent. We can imagine we're the enjoyer, we're the proprietor, we're the controller, but we're not. So this is the first understanding, that we're dependent. But Maya, or the illusory energy, will give us the false hope that we can be independent. If we get a good education, good wife, then we'll be independent. But it's not possible. We're always dependent. Same example. We're dependent on the air that we breathe. So we should declare our dependence. Happily declare our dependence. Yes, Krishna, I am dependent on you. You're the Lord. I'm your servant. I'm your part and parcel. And the part is meant to serve the whole. So please engage me in your service. If we have that mood, then Krishna is in our heart. He'll be happy to reciprocate with us. There's a nice verse. Krishna says, as you surrender unto me, I reciprocate accordingly. So that will depend on us, how much we want to surrender. We can surrender fully, and we can declare from right now, whatever you want, I'm going to do, Krishna. Or we can never surrender. That's our choice. We have free will. But our free will consists either we turn to God or we turn away from God. If we turn away from God, then we're also dependent on God, but through his external energy, or Maya, illusory energy. No one is independent. But we imagine we're in Maya, or the illusory energy gives us the false hope that we can become independent and enjoy separately. But it's not possible. We're under the strict law of material nature. Just like in a prison house, someone may think I'm free, but you're not free. Every night the bars are closed. You have to remain in the prison. So material world is something like that. It's a prison house for those rebellious souls who want to put themselves in the center. It's like the prison house in the state. Those who break the law, they go to the prison house. So we break the law. What is the law is, in the spiritual world, everybody's happy to put God in the center. Ishavashamidam sarvam. This is from Isha Upanishad. Everyone is happy to put God in the center. Lord Jesus also says, love God with your whole heart, your whole soul, your whole mind, and your neighbor as yourself. But we don't want to do that. We want to put ourselves in the center. And therefore we make everything troublesome. And it works on individual level, and it works on the national level, international level. If I'm Chinese, I love the Chinese nation more than the American nation. If I'm American, so there's always conflict here in the material world. Don't we see how much conflict there is? there's never ending to conflict because the whole thing is wrong. The wrong thing is to put yourself in the center, just like a child on a plane. He doesn't care if he disturbs 50 people. This is our false ego. But now the impersonalists will come and say, yes, we have to give up ego. But that's not practical. We have identity. Ego means identity. We have to give up false ego, but there's a real ego. What is the real ego? Yes, I'm a servant of the servant of the servant of the Lord eternally. So that's a good news. We don't lose our identity. We just change our identity from thinking that I'm the Lord to recognizing there is a Lord, Krishna, and we should put him in the center. If we put him in the center, then we can be happy in this world. And we can qualify to enter the spiritual world after giving up this body. Or even while in this body, there's also mentioned, just really quickly, that Krishna says, when the embodied being is able to transcend these three modes of material nature, he can become free from birth, death, old age, and their distress, and can enjoy nectar even in this life. So this is in the 14th chapter. If we transcend the modes of material nature, we can enjoy nectar even in this life. We can realize the kingdom of God even now, because God is in our heart. Some saintly people have attained to that level. We're following in the footsteps of those saintly people, and we hope also to become pure devotees in this life so we can see God face to face. It's not just like when you're dead, then you'll be happy. Remember when I was a Christian, that was kind of the mood. Now you have to suffer, nice to suffer, you have to suffer. But when you die, then you go to heaven. So, but here, Bhagavad Gita is saying, no, you can attain perfection even now in this life. But you have to take the process. What is the process? But God is the center. But that's Jesus said, because the false ego always pops up. What about me? What about me? If I put God in the center, I'll lose something. I'll miss the opportunity to become prominent in this world. I won't be recognized as a great philosopher or as a great logician or as a great businessman. That's what I want. So everybody in this world is trying to get an advantage here. We're jockeying for position, one-upmanship, and we become ruthless. Nation to nation. Look at the history. How much war is there? I remember I was speaking to our boys in the Gurukul, young boys. And so I asked them in Vrindavan, I said, what did you study today? Oh, we studied history. I said, what did you learn in history? We learned that history is one war after another. There's the War of 1812. There's the Civil War. There's the Spanish-American War. There's World War I. There's World War II. There's the Korean War. There's Vietnam. The whole history is made around war because this is the history of humanity. So much war. Why? Because it's false ego. Everybody loves themselves the most. But we met a person who didn't love himself the most. He loved Krishna more than himself. That's our spiritual master. He really did. And because of that, he was happy. He wasn't in anxiety about his position because he was in the right position, servant of the servant. And from that position, nobody can shake him. Just like in your tradition, the Prahlad Maharaj is there. You may know the history of Prahlad. He was the son of Hiranyakashipu, who was a great demon. So his father was always trying to torment him to give up his devotional service. But it was not possible because it's on a different level. So the boy was always peaceful. He was always happy. But the father was always agitated. He was the most powerful materialist. He was never peaceful. So nobody can be peaceful in this material world. It's always full of agitation and anxiety. But if we come on the spiritual side, then we can find peace. That's possible. It requires a change of consciousness. Instead of putting myself in the center, I have to think what will be pleasing to Krishna. And someone will say, well, Krishna is far away. Therefore, we have what we call disciple succession. Our spiritual master is the representative of Krishna, humble representative. And he very much servant of his spiritual master, who's a servant of his spiritual master, and the original spiritual master is Krishna. So in this way, the knowledge is coming down. Sometimes we give the example of mango fruit at the top of a tree. You can't just drop it down. If it's handed down one person to the other, then you can get the unbroken fruit. So knowledge is coming like that, in parampara, disciplic succession. And because it appeared to be broken, therefore Krishna came again and spoke to Arjuna. This is mentioned in the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. This knowledge appears to be broken. Therefore I've come again to reestablish this parampara. So we're receiving knowledge in that way, coming down. Dharma tu shakshat bhagavat pranita means that religion is made by God. It's already there. The sun is rising according to its order of the Lord. The seasons are changing. The system is already working by God's arrangement. All we have to do is get in harmony with it. We're so puffed up. We think we don't care for the system. We make our own system. But then we run into trouble. And if we take that trouble as an impetus, then it can be useful. The impetus should be, for so long I've tried to be happy separate from the Lord, but I don't find happiness. Let me, this one lifetime, dedicate myself to putting God in the center. And the guarantee, Krishna says, you'll be happy. And even if you don't get full success, whatever you do, it will be in your credit. And then when you start again, even in this life, of course, our spiritual master was encouraging us. Why not finish up in this life? Why not become a pure devotee? Why not do everything for Krishna? Krishna advises that everything you should do it for me. And in this chapter, 9th chapter, we'll read that verse. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, should be done. And then he tells you, when you have to eat, but first offer it to me. So everybody can do that. Keep a picture of Krishna and make an offering to him before you eat. And that way, your eating will be purifying you. Otherwise, we're making more karma for ourselves. Because we're eating, we have to kill to eat, so it implicates us in this material world. We want to get out of the material world. The only way to get out is to do everything for Krishna. Then that was this theme of Bhagavad Gita, because Arjuna was saying, well, Krishna, you wanted me to fight, but how can I fight? These are my superior. Bhishma and Drona are my superior. If I fight them, I'll get bad karma. So what does Krishna say? No, if you do it for me, there's no karma. We can rise above the platform of karma. The platform of karma is duality. You can come above the platform of karma by doing everything for Krishna. Then you get spiritual credit. And gradually your good karma and your bad karma will be finished, and then you can attain the spiritual realm. So we want to get free from any kind of karma. Therefore, we're not to just do pious activity. No, we want to do everything for Krishna. Then there's no material result. This is our goal. We want to get qualified to enter into the spiritual world. That in the spiritual world, there's no karma. Material world, just like a prison house, there's law. So in the material world, it's like a prison house, the law. The law is karma. But we're so smart, we think we can manipulate the karma and get good karma and be happy here. But it's temporary. And then after some time, it can change. We make good, but then circumstances change. We can become passionate and ignorant again and come out of goodness. So best thing is to finish up our business. This is also described in the end of the 14th chapter. Mam charyo vyabhichenina bhakti yogena sevite saguna samititatan brahmabhuyo pakalpite. Means that if we engage ourselves fully in Krishna's service, then we transcend the modes of material nature and we come to the level of Brahman, which is spiritual. Brahma bhuta prasanatma nasotati kanchati. Brahma bhuta prasanatma means just joyful. Nasotati kanchati. No more hankering or lamentation. Material world is always hankering and lamentation. We can come to the point, no more hankering and lamentation, and then we'll see everyone as particle of God. Then we can engage in devotional service. Then we become qualified to enter the spiritual world. So, as I was reading, we can enter the spiritual world even here while we're in the material world. And Prabhupada was at that level. I don't claim to be at that level, but I'm confident by following the instruction of the liberated soul, like Sri Prabhupada, and following the instructions of Lord Sri Krishna, I can come to that point of pure liberation. It means free from the laws of material nature, and the spiritual body is already within me. That will become manifest more and more. So this is our goal. It's not hope against hope, because we're seeing practically over the years I've been practicing that we make progress. And the first progress is we lose our attraction for sinful activities, for sense gratification. Everybody's attracted to illicit sex. But as we progress in spiritual life, we see that sex life is troublesome, illicit or illicit. So we lose our interest in that. And then what are we? We lose our interest in becoming greedy. These things that keep us in the material world, greed and lust and anger, we were able to give them up. This will be the first symptom that we're making progress, that we lose our attraction for trying to manipulate the material energy for our advantage. See, there's no advantage here. What's the use of being President Trump or somebody? Do you want to change places with President Trump? He's a fool. Why do you want to be like him? So what is the use of having power and prestige and position? When we're all after that. And what's the sex life? That's the biggest bondage. So we see that these things are temporary and full of trouble. Therefore, we get a higher taste. Param Jistanavartate. Krishna says you can get a higher taste. So we get a higher taste. How? We're discussing these things, and by chanting the name of the Lord, we chant together. Our kirtan is very joyful. We dance, and in this way, we're able to give up our material desires and come to the level of Brahman, where we can be happy in any condition. Just like now, I'm in an awkward position in one sense because of this virus. We can't have so much kirtan, dancing, and all together packed up in a room. But still, I feel joyful because Krishna reciprocates, and we go on with our chanting. We can chant with our beads, or we can chant loudly and dance. The chanting gives us life. Okay, I think maybe I spoke already too much. I'd like to stop now. If there's any comment or questions, I'd be glad to hear. 10 people are still with us.
Mm-hmm.
What about it?
We have millions of questions. After listening to you, we have million more questions. But a few of them is like, why God
Let's
like
take one at a time.
Okay, one at a time. Okay. So why God like to keep the things in secret, and it's up to us to reveal all the secret. And then
okay, that's a good question. God doesn't like to keep things secret, but by misuse of our independence, we've spoiled it. In other words, in the spiritual world, there's no secret. Everyone loves God, and everyone's cooperating. If we want to put ourselves in the center, then we create the disturbance. Just like the parents are there. They may have a 5-year-old child. If they want to discuss with their friends, the child may be causing disturbance. So the parents will say, Johnny, go in the next room, you can play with your brother there, the toys there, because we want to discuss amongst each other some discussion, some adult discussion. So the child will have to cooperate. Yes, okay, I'll go into the other room. Otherwise, they're going to be, Mommy, Daddy, what about this? I want this. So they create disturbance. So we created the disturbance. Why does that disturbance? We want to put ourselves in the center. But in the spiritual world, everybody agrees to put God in the center. But God doesn't force us to put him in the center because it's based on love. So we misuse our independence. We want to put ourselves in the center. So Krishna said, okay, come to the material world. You can put yourself in the center. You can imagine that you're in the center. But you won't be happy with under this imagination. So he doesn't exclude us. He doesn't make it come. We disqualify ourselves by not accepting that he's superior to us. We want to put ourselves in the center. So it's not, we can't blame God that he's not revealing himself to us. He's ready to reveal himself, but we want to put ourselves in the center. How can he help us? We're proud. You have experience. The proud person, how can you guide them? They think they know it all. We've all experienced those kind of people in the world. They know it all. You can't tell them anything. Oh, I know better than you. I know. Okay, you know better than me, then go on your own way. So that's how Krishna deals with us. If we surrender to him, He's very happy to come personally and guide us. But if we think, no, I don't need help, I'm okay, then what can he do? You may say that, well, he's keeping himself hidden from us, but no, we're keeping ourselves separate from him. It's not him, it's us. Our desire has brought us to the material world, and our desire can bring us back. So we shouldn't blame God.
Yep. So the other question was,
That question is satisfying?
yeah, it is.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Next
So
question.
next is like you mentioned, either we go to the God or we go away from him. Everything is God. So even though we go away or towards him.
Yeah, but that's a half truth. Everything is God, but within that oneness, there's variety. Just like we say, fire is one, but it has two energies, has light and heat. Well, God is one, but he has multifarious energy. And I mentioned that in the beginning. The three main categories of energy is the Lord himself, the living entities, and material nature. So the material nature is also God, but it's his external energy. So there's one and difference. Simultaneously one and different. Everything is God. Maya is also God. Yes, but she's kicking you. The prison house is also part of the government.
Mm-hmm.
But it's different than a free citizen. So now we're in a prison house. We can remain in God's prison house. It's under God's law. I mentioned the law of karma. That's also God's arrangement. But you're under the law of karma. Do you agree?
Mm-hmm.
So that means you're conditioned. You're in a conditioned state. Now you want to get out of that conditioned state, become liberated, then you can do that. You can transcend the law of karma and come to the level of Brahman. So there's a different energy there. There's Maya, there's Brahman, and Parabrahman. Krishna is the Parabrahman. He's the supreme Brahman. So it's not enough to say everything is one. There's also variety. Variety is the spice of life. Variety is the mother of enjoyment. We say there's variety in the spiritual world also. There's Krishna, he's dancing with the gopis. He's dealing with his coward boyfriends. He has his mother and father, Mother Yasoda. We don't think this is mythology. We think it's true. Krishna accepts the position of a child just to satisfy Mother Yasoda. Right. Next.
So, can I ask you a question, Sanjay?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, Swamiji, there are definitely unresolved questions.
Can you speak very clearly?
Can you hear me clearly?
It's a little slow.
Can you hear me clearly?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, so there are definitely unresolved questions with materialism. The question is, and this might be an odd one, is can materialism be used as a path towards spirituality?
Yes.
I'm not talking about hedonism. I'm talking about materialism in its purest sense.
Well, we're saying material is also Krishna. He says earth, fire, ether, Maya, these are all my external energy. Earth, water, air, fire. So the secret is to use it in service of Krishna, then it becomes spiritualized. We give the example of iron rod. Iron rod is not fire, but if you keep it in the fire, it becomes just like fire. So this is the whole thing of Bhagavad Gita. Krishna didn't tell Arjuna to give up his work. He said work, but work in a spirit of devotion. Work for my pleasure. And so Arjuna did that, and he became perfect by his work. So you can say, well, that work is materialistic, fighting. When you use the Christian service, it becomes spiritual life. You follow?
Yes, I do.
Maharaj, I have a question. I think it's similar to this, and I think you already gave me the answer. I was going to ask you, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga, which one is better? Just doing prayer to God or doing your work in the material world? But you just gave me the answer.
Yeah, but the problem with Karma Yoga is then we become attached to the result and we become proud of the result. Bhakti yoga doesn't mean we don't work. Arjuna didn't stop working. That's the point I'm making. He's working, but he's doing it in devotion. Therefore, he does not partake of the result. The result is offered to Krishna. He's not. Krishna tells Arjuna, you have a right to work, but you're not entitled to the result. But in Karmic yogi, they want the result oftentimes, and therefore they have to remain in the material world to get the good karma. But we want to get free from karma altogether. There's karma, there's vikarma, means bad activities, and there's akarma. Akarma means work, but that doesn't give any material result. But this is bhakti. We work for the pleasure of the Lord. Krishna never tells Arjuna, sit down in the back of the chariot, I'll kill all these rascals. No, he tells you have to fight, Arjuna. So we have to work, but we work in a spirit of devotion for the pleasure of the Lord without being attached to the result. Then it becomes bhakti. No question of not working. We're active by nature.
As much as I'd like to understand and say, yes, I got you, or I understood you, I don't buy a lottery ticket because of the fact that I know that the odds of winning or getting a result is bad. Whenever I put some work, I expect a result, a very tangible, definitive result. Is that wrong? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying that result should be for Krishna's pleasure. If it's pleasing to Krishna, then it's fine. But he should be the judge, not you.
Okay. Well, can I ask you one question that's related directly to me, which is, I have a problem with one of the materialistic world things that I have in my hand, which is my cell phone. It has contributed to a lot of attention deficit disorder. I constantly check my cell phone for a lot of these, messages, WhatsApp, and all kinds of stuff. Is there a small little secret mantra you can tell me so that I can, I can deal with this ADHD related to my cell phone?
Yeah, you can use your cell phone, and you can have Bhagavad Gita verses on your cell phone and check them anytime. In other words, we don't say cell phone is wrong. We don't say money is wrong. Anything can be used for the pleasure of the Lord. Arjuna showed that. Even fighting is the most horrible thing, violence. But Krishna said, yeah, if you do it for me, then it becomes an act of devotion. So we have to learn how to use everything, cell phone, money, whatever, just fire. If you say fire is wrong, if the house is burnt down, then you say, oh, this was bad. But the same fire, it cooks your food. So it's not bad. Money is not bad. Cell phone is not bad. It depends how you use it. If you use it in the service of the Lord, then it becomes welcome. So that requires a little guidance. Therefore, we have Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. These are the three authorities to keep us in the right line, so we know that actually God is being pleased. So Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. And then
so tell me, what should I do on my cell phone to make it? You want me to carry a little Bhagavad Gita on my cell phone?
Yeah, a lot of devotees have that. Yeah, immediately they go to the Bhagavad Gita. When we're giving class, I'm giving class here, then someone will come, oh, here's a nice chapter here. They have so many things on their cell phone relating to devotional service.
Okay. That actually is a very definitive answer. So I will download these phrases, Bhagavad Gita phrases on my cell phone.
You can also, if you want to connect with me more, I have an email address. You have some personal questions, I don't know how much we can discuss here, but I'm at trivikrama.swami@gmail.com. Trivikrama.
Okay.
Trivikrama.swami, trivikrama.swami@gmail.com. And I'll be glad to, discuss with you anytime. But I'm using the internet. We're using the internet right now. So it's not the internet is bad, or the Gmail is bad or something. It's how we use it. If we use it for pornography, then of course, that'll take it away from Krishna. If we use it for Krishna service, then it's welcome. Prabhupada used the dictaphone, he used the car, he used the airplanes. It's not bad. Okay, next.
This is Sanjay.
Sanjay.
Hello.
So,
I wanted to
Maharaj,
address other people. You and
I have one question, if I can ask. Is that okay?
yeah. Tanya, Janji, Maggie, and other.
yes, I do have a question, Sanjay.
Go ahead, Chaitanya.
So my question is, in today's times in India, there is a battle between dharmic forces and other forces. What is our karma, or what is our dharma and karma as people who want to be involved in dharmic activities?
Then you're very fortunate. Who can stop you if you want to be engaged in dharmic activities? But you have to know what is the dharma, what is the actual law of God, what is the principles of religion, what are the principles of religion? Because many people don't know. Just like we had President Obama. He was a very nice president, people liked him, but he didn't know dharma because he was in favor of a third-term abortion for the child. So this is not dharma. The child has a right to live. Just doesn't mean we can commit abortion and not get some result from that. We're going to get some bad karma from that, from killing a child. So we have to know what is dharma, what is the actual law of God. Dharma means law. So it's coming from God. So if we know the law of God, then we're very fortunate. We can move in this world without any check. It's like Prahlad Maharaj. He knew the Dharma, so his father couldn't check him.
I'd like to rephrase this question because I know. So, I mean, there are lots of attack on Hindus performing their Hinduism, basically. So other religion or not religion, you can say other organizations, they're trying to suppress them from not rituals. So, point of view on that one. Guru, did you hear?
No. No, I
Hello?
can hear now, but I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't hear what you said.
Would like to repeat it, or someone else has a question?
Go ahead, repeat.
Oh, these are Hare Krishna and Ganesh.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So repeat the question. In other words,
My
you don't
question
like
was
to-
basically like the Hindu rituals, like lots of people there perform the Hindu rituals or devotees, not like the karma of the Gita one, but just praying to the God. But there are so many organizations right now, they are trying to suppress Hindu things or like organizations like Islamic things or those kind of stuff.
Generally, we don't get so much involved in that because it comes to the point of politics. We want to rise above the duality of the material world. We're saying God is one. You should worship Him. If you're a good Christian, go worship Him purely. If you're a good Muslim, worship Him purely. But we're saying it's hard to do because you don't have a clear idea of who is God, what He looks like, what His activities are. So the real religion means to love God with your whole heart, your whole soul, your whole mind, like I said. But how can I love God? I don't know what He looks like, what He does, what His activities are. So we want to come above the duality of Hindu, Muslim, and come to the point of science. I don't consider myself as Hindu. I'm a Sanatanist. I'm following the Dharma that is given by the Vedas.
Maharaj,
Suppose you're in Afghanistan where you're not allowed to perform anything except if you perform as a Islam. So what do you do over there? And don't get into things. Just do your karma, or what is the way of that? Because over there is like if you don't convert, they will kill you.
No, I think let me rephrase, Sanjay. I think what we like. I think what you are trying to convey, and Chet also trying to convey is, Maharaji, I don't think the rising above politics is an option all the time. You cannot rise above the politics sometimes. You gotta play politics. I think that's what I mean. And pardon me, I'm not claiming to be a knowledgeable person, but I think Krishna was a great politician, wasn't he?
That is the question. I think that's a beautiful question. Kunal, thank you so much for articulating that.
I mean, I don't think we have to rise above politics. Sometimes it's not an option.
Okay. Let me answer. The answer is politics means two sides, and our analysis is both sides are wrong. So why get involved? Just like we're going to have an election soon, Democrats, Republicans. We don't get involved because none of them know the principles of religion. Why get drawn into this politics when both sides are wrong? You show me a side that's right, and I'll support them. Who is that? Who's actually representing Dharma? Which side?
But in that case, I mean, if you're not exercising your vote, then democracy will fail.
True.
If everybody goes
The
to
democracy should fail.
then it should be like what? The communist?
Should have a righteous king like he is here. Ramachandra.
That's amazing answer.
Maharaj, again, I have a question here. Sanjay ji, can you hear me? So, in this material world, I know it's things are going around, and what's the best way to go to moksha? That's my number one question. And before you answer that one, actually, I had the same situation as Sean had just mentioned about the checking the phone. So I joined the international japa session, which is actually 108 mantras, and which actually released some of my staff with that. So I'm checking less and less phones. I do actually start this international japa session, which is the want to have my mind divert to the different areas. So Sean can actually use that if he'd like to use it.
That sounds good. That's a nice suggestion.
Thank you very much for that. Yes, I'm looking for something.
Right.
Like-
So my question to
goes-
Maharaj is
I got your question, John.
Yes, go ahead.
The answer is Krishna is Mukunda. He's the giver of liberation. Liberation will stand at your door with folded hands if you become Krishna's devotee. Liberation just comes automatically for the devotee. He just goes on with his work, and the liberation will follow him. So we're saying everything's included in one stroke of bhakti. You love God with your whole heart, whole soul, whole mind, and liberation will stand at your door with folded hands.
Is liberation inner peace you're talking about?
Liberation means your spiritual body is developed and you enter into the spiritual world where you engage in the service of the Lord in the spiritual body. You see the Lord face to face. You exchange with him in love 24 hours. It's 24/7. That's real liberation. That's Vaishnava liberation. Not just liberation, you become one with God. We don't accept the liberation. We're not interested in becoming one with God because then love stops. Then the service stops. We see ourselves as eternal servants, eternal lovers of God. We're not interested in that kind of impersonal liberation.
I mean, in the different form I formulated. Basically, in that kind of situation, I myself convinced like nothing is more important at this moment. So just enjoy. Things can wait. Things were same, will remain same. So at this moment, just enjoy the nature, which is God. So just surrender that to the God.
I'm not exactly clear what the purport of what you're saying is.
It was not question. It was just
To make a comment?
Yes. Comment was basically like when I'm worried or checking email 20 times. Like so many things I'm thinking at this moment, which means like I have concern. If I won't take care of those things right now, then things will fall. It will go out of control of my hand. So if we convince ourselves, okay, things will remain same. how it
You
was
have
before.
you have a copy of Bhagavad Gita?
I do, yes.
You can read this
Started-
one verse, chapter 2, text 41. When you get a chance, not right now, chapter 2, text 41. We're saying if you put God in the center, everything will be automatically, the priorities will be automatically arranged for you. There's a story like that. When Arjuna was, and the Pandavas were being tested by Dronacharya at the archery, they were learning archery. So there was one stuffed bird in the tree, and Dronacharya, he called Yudhisthira. He said, take your bow and point. What do you see? Oh, I see the bird. What else do you see? I see the tree. What else do you see? I see the sky. And then like that, everyone was saying like that. Then he came to Arjuna, and he said, Arjuna, what do you see? I see the bird. What else do you see? I see the head of the bird. What else do you see? I see the eye of the bird. Yes. One pointed. God in the center, one pointed. The question should always be, is this pleasing to God? Then it's one pointed. We don't become many branched and lose our focus.
Maharaj, I have another question. I know it's getting late, but first of all, I really,
I can say and talk all day, but it's
I really appreciate you came this evening. And also, I will actually ask the group members. We might have a weekly session if we can have it for the small session. That'd be great if you allow us a time and that. And after that, the question I have, I know I've been listening to you for years and admire you and as my guru. And one of the most important chapter, which I actually loved it when you really described very well, what happens in the situation when Krishna actually was giving the permission to Arjuna, and Arjuna say, you know what, I can't do it. I cannot fight with my own people. So what exactly in details Krishna has actually prepared him to fight again? And what kind of those conversations? I would love to hear more and more.
That's there in the second chapter, in the beginning of the second chapter. Mm-hmm. Then Arjuna becomes confused. He puts down his bow. He said, I shall not fight. But then Krishna, then he accepts Krishna as a spiritual master. So then Krishna can speak to him not as a friend, but as a guru, as a master. And he tells him, the first thing he says is kutas. Kutas means, where from have these impurities come? Why are you being sentimental like a woman? Why are you not ready to do your duty? Why is this? How is this weakness of mind come upon you that you're giving up your duty? So Bhagavad Gita also preaches on duty. It's your duty. He is trained as a Kshatriya. It's his duty to fight on principles of religion. So he says him like that. The first point is, it's your duty. It's just war. This is your duty to fight. So we should find out what is our duty and act according to that.
I have a question when it comes to duty. We see a lot of injustice that we all agree with. For example, the way we see things happening, as Sanjay pointed out, to the Hindus, Sikhs, Christians in Pakistan. When we see these injustices, are we duty bound to reach out and do something? Or is it okay to say, this is their karma, mine is different, and say that this is how the Lord wants it to be? Are we duty bound if it's within our means to correct an injustice?
If it's within our means, yeah, we can correct an injustice. But again, we have to give the past something that's going to be a substantial relief, not just some patchwork thing that will temporarily make a solution, and then in a few days it'll fall apart again. So the real solution again is to put God in the center. Become a better Muslim. Study a little bit about Muslim religion. You know, Muhammad wasn't such a fanatic. He was bringing social reform, but the people were fanatical. As soon as he left, they immediately divided into two, right? Shia and Sunni. They started killing each other. And what kind of people was he teaching to them? He was teaching two. He had to tell them, don't have sex with your mother. What kind of people were they? They're having sex with their mother? And he had to tell them, when you come into the house, you should come in through the front door. They were coming in like in the tent. They would just come crashing in. So he had to train them. He tried to reform them. So our spiritual master, he gave respect to Muhammad, that he was a reformer and getting people to say prayer and so on. It was better than being the savages that were the way they were.
So right now in Pakistan, with the treatment of Hindus and Sikhs, should we hope they will be treated better in the future, or are we duty bound to do something?
What can you do, though?
I don't know. We can donate some money, maybe form a group, maybe raise some awareness. I don't know.
Because I have people who I know that are close with me who go to Pakistan regularly and preach to the Hindus there. I can connect you with that person, and he can help you. He can advise you how to best help the Hindus in Pakistan. Maybe money, or maybe some other way. I'm not sure. He goes regularly there.
But are we duty bound to do something about it, or is it not really compulsive, or is it not binding upon us to be empathetic to people and discuss?
Have you ever visited there?
No, I'm too scared to go there.
Okay, so then I suggest that maybe how you arrange. What can you do?
Give some money, maybe?
To who?
To some organization that's trying to look for their welfare, maybe rescue them, bring them into India to safety.
Again, we have to be careful. Bhagavad Gita talks about charity in the 18th chapter, different kinds of charity. Charity in the mode of goodness, charity in the mode of passion, charity in the mode of ignorance, and transcendental charity. So the highest charity is to give to people who are, you can say, teaching real dharma, real religion. So if you can find people like that, like my friend is there, I can give you his connection. I guarantee his work.
I think you get the very good answer. Basically, the sense is we just discuss only one section of Bhagavad Gita today. So we need to listen the whole thing. So then only we can see entirety and find the answers there. So that way it will be much better to see the answer.
You can get Bhagavad Gita as it is, especially with Srila Prabhupada's commentaries. That would be wonderful. Sanjaya has hundreds of copies of that. He puts them in the hotels. Not Sanjaya, but Mr. Gautam, John.
Yeah. Okay. And
So
I have...
you can. He'll be happy to give you Bhagavad Gita, only $5.
Go ahead, Abhay.
Yeah. So maybe on a different note, my question is, Swamiji, where do you see Sanatana Dharma in the future, the coming year, given the chaotic environment that we see around the globe?
But don't be so much, over ambitious that you're going to change the whole world. First, you have to change yourself. That should be the first priority. Let me become pure. Let me get rid of my lust and greed and anger. And then I can do something. According to Krishna will give me the intelligence more and more how to improve the world. But the first thing is, we should preach, but the first qualification is we have to practice. 2 words, achar and prachar. Achar means practice and prachar means preaching. So we have to practice nicely. Then Krishna will give us also intelligence from within. He's in our heart. So if we practice nicely, then we'll be inspired how to preach. And of course, we can take help from the Shastra, from gurus, from sadhus. Then we'll know what the best way to use our energy. We all have some energy. We have some money, which is also energy. So how to use it properly, that requires intelligence.
You're saying there are process of becoming Arjun, not in one night anyone can become Arjun and have a power like him. So there's some process to become Arjun, become that strong, and then you can serve whatever that calls.
We never become Arjun. Arjun is Arjun. This is the first teaching of the Gita, that he is an individual and you're an individual. You can become like Arjun, you can become pure as Arjun, but Arjun is Arjun. You'll never become Arjun.
Maharaj, I just want to let you know, I did actually have given a lot of copies to Sanjay ji and complimentary copies. And as we put on all of our hotels, and so anybody needs those, I'm willing to give them free of cost on this copy.
Let me just speak a little bit in praise of this Gita, because in the Western world for hundreds of years, the Bhagavad Gita has been there. Nobody became a devotee of Krishna, but Srila Prabhupada coming and giving his Bhagavad Gita, so many thousands of people became devotees, and more are still becoming devotees. Like I preach in Russia and these countries, so many people are becoming devotees from reading Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, because he's empowered. He's following the footsteps of Arjuna. What was Arjuna's qualification? Why was he chosen to be the first one to hear Bhagavad Gita? That's mentioned in the 4th chapter. Krishna said, because you're my devotee, my friend, therefore I'm giving you this knowledge. Because you're my bhakta. So Prabhupada was a bhakta, therefore Krishna gave him this knowledge that he could write this Bhagavad Gita, which influenced so many people's lives. I mean, my life is completely changed because of reading Bhagavad Gita. So this Bhagavad Gita is very important. Sanjay will give you.
Maharaj, the one thing, actually somebody has a question regarding the cruelty in Pakistan against the Hinduism. But I just want to let them know that I did meet other Guruji Swami from Pakistan, who actually who came to our ISKCON long time ago, and he had been there for 20 plus years, and also he established more than 25 temples in Pakistan. The best way to do actually,
I think I met him, right?
Yes, that's correct. We really want to help. If we really want to help, what we need to do, the only way to help them out, that is the open a legislation by Hare Krishna people who actually devotees are there. Because in this country or in other country, there's a system called the basic system to start things from a legislation. We go to Washington DC and teach them, let them know, make them aware of the cruelty the Hinduism are going through in Pakistan.
That person who's preaching there, that